Hi, it's a beautiful day here in the area where I live. The humidity is down, the sunshine is out, the temperatures are nice. I've got all the shop doors open. So today I'm fretting some necks, and I thought, well, why don't you do a demonstration on that? Now I know there's a lot of demonstrations on YouTube on this very subject, but I thought maybe my particular flavor or my take on it or my way of demonstrating might be helpful. So we'll get right down to it. Now, I've heard questions in podcasts and things before um, asked about frets and fretting and compatible saws and that sort of thing, and nobody seems to really come up with just a straightforward answer. So I thought I'd hit on that subject before I go any further. If you look at this drawing I have here of a fret, uh, the fret wire that I'm using at the moment, which I'm not going to bother with make and model. I don't think that's necessary, but um, I measure the tang width of that fret wire at 20 thousandths of an inch. And I am using the recommended saw that goes with it at 23 thousandths of an inch. There's a drawing of the kerf, and you'll note that I'm using a 23 thousandths inch saw. So it seems logical then that if you're trying to match a fret wire to a particular saw, what you're after is once you know the tang width, you're after something that's going to be, I would say, three, obviously three, and maybe as much as four, and I wouldn't go much beyond 5 thousandths of an inch wider than that tang. I measured on this fret wire myself, I measured 30 thousandths of an inch from tang to tang, uh, which tells you a little bit about the grip that it gets. Now, the size of the fret wire that you use, the width, the crown, those are matters that I'm not going to deal with right now. I'm using a medium fret wire. The next neck that I'm going to do, I think I'm going to use a very tiny fret wire, and I have a couple of reasons for that, but I won't go into that. So I'm going to move you up and start showing you how I prepare to do my fret work and then how I actually do that. To begin with, uh, I fret my necks with the fingerboard on. Now, I know some people will fret their fingerboards and then glue them down. This is just my way of doing it. I don't know if the other way is better or not. That's, I think, something that you have to decide for yourself through trial and error, experimentation. Um, I have already cut my fret slots, of course, and I do that at a table saw with special blades and a jig, which are readily available. You can make your own jigs to do this just as easily. Um, but those slots have to be cut at the proper depth, and there are commercially available gauges that will tell you whether or not you have those at the right depth. Um, but if you don't want to pay the high price of one of those, you could just take a dowel like this and take a piece of the fret wire or different fret wires that you use. And I just made this little tool. I just partially cut that wire and bent it so that now I can put that on there and compare my fret slot depth. Works just as well as the commercially available tools. If you find after you've cut your fret slots, no matter how you have done it, that they're not quite deep enough, not to worry. By taking a hand fret saw, and you can see the name on that, Waverly. This was supplied by Stuart McDonald. Um, I put a gauge on this. You can buy these gauges, I guess, but why bother? You can take a thin slat of wood, or in this case, I have a piece of, happens to be 1/4 inch acrylic. 1/8 inch might be better because it'd be lighter, but I didn't have any. If you cut a couple of slots in it and wing nut it down to the saw, you can set that up and you can gauge the depth of your cuts. And if you need to, you can set that saw in there and just improve that. Now, also, I'm doing an unbound fingerboard. The procedure for a bound fingerboard is going to be a little different, but that'll have to be another demonstration, I think, for another day. Um, so the first thing I'm going to need to do with my fret wire is I don't get it in coils. I get it in lots of straight pieces, like this, a tube of those, and those need to be arched. Now, this is very important. You have to arch this fret wire. If you don't, believe it or not, you'll have a much more difficult time at putting those frets down. So I'm going to bring you over to my device here. This is, can you see that properly? I hope so. This is my fret arching device. Now, if you look on the website of the major supplier of tools for guitar building and repair, they have one of these. I don't know what the price is. I don't know. I think it's $70 or $80. Might even be more. Uh, I made this, and it probably didn't cost me more than 35 cents in scrap aluminum and bolts to do it. And it works every bit as well as theirs. It's easy to do. And if you're interested, put in the comments section you'd like a little more detail on this or how you might make one. I'd be happy to answer questions for you. So here I've arched my wire. This is adjustable so that I can change the degree of radius to match fingerboards, but I stick with 16-inch because I'm doing acoustic instruments. And it's always a good idea. Sorry for dancing you around here. It's always a good idea to compare that wire, and you don't need to match that radius exactly. In fact, you want ever so slightly a little more radius in your wire than you have in the board. You can drive that center down, not very much. I guess, do you need a number? I don't know what that number would be. Let's just say not much more than about 10 thousandths of an inch high in the center. That should give you plenty. So now my next step will be to cut my fret wire. Um, you can hammer these frets in and cut your wire as you go. And if you're not gluing your frets in, I suppose that's a perfectly legitimate deal. But if you're gluing your frets in, then you'll need to prepare each one by approximate length. And to make that a little easier, I just made up this block. I drilled holes in it. Each hole carries one fret, and I've numbered them 1 to 24, and it's just really simple. Now, I hope I'm not being too basic here, but I just take a piece of fret wire and let it overlap the opposite side over here. I come in here with my pliers, and I go maybe a 1/16 of an inch over length, a little more if you're more comfortable with that, and clip that off and put that right there in the number 1 slot. And I go all the way down through that fretboard doing just exactly that. I hope my hands are not in the way. They probably are. Sorry. And I'll take just a second to talk about these pliers. These are a fretting plier. They're nothing more than a channel lock side cutter. I bought these, I've probably had these for 30 years. Bought them from Luther's Mercantile, and they freely admitted that they just remachined these, but they've been excellent. I don't know what's out there now for sale to do this work, but I'm glad these have still held up. I don't recommend that you do stainless steel wire with this too much because you'll be buying these pliers every few weeks. So I'm going to go down through and cut all of my frets. And as I said, that's most important if you're going to glue your frets in. Whether or not I'm going to glue my frets depends on each instrument. There are times when I feel a need to do that, and there are other times when I don't feel that I have to. A fret is nothing more than a nail. That's all it is. And there's no reason why, if your slot is properly formed and your fret is sized correctly, there's no reason why that shouldn't drive down in there and stay there. So I'm going to probably, with this one, I'm probably not going to glue these in. But I'll need to make a test way down here at the end of the fingerboard where it doesn't count quite as much before I proceed. Before I go further, I just thought I'd show you this little stage here, or holding mechanism. This is something that I use just to keep a neck in position. It doesn't clamp the neck down real tight, but it's just a block angled to accommodate the headpiece. I've got something here, just a scrap block to lift the neck to keep it in position. And I'm using what would essentially be kind of a heel block here that the neck tenon fits in. It's just an easy to make handy device that I use. And I use this for not cutting fret slots because it doesn't hold securely that way. Um, but I use this for doing all of the refining work and preparation for fretting. And over here, I can just clamp the neck in position so that it just holds nice and still. It's not perfectly rigid, but it works. Uh, Before I drive any frets into this, and I've determined it looks like I'm not going to do any gluing with this. Maybe I'll demonstrate one with glue just to show you how that can be done if you have questions. But before I drive any frets, I want to refer back to this drawing uh, because I specifically made this sketch showing a radius right here between the tang and the underside of the fret crown on each side. And the reason I did that is because it is a reality in machining, even in precise machining, there is no such thing as a perfect 90-degree angle. There will be a fillet of some kind in that corner. And fret wire, as far as I know, it's certainly not machined. It's extruded, which means there won't be anything even close to a square corner there. So in order to help the fret seat as nicely as you want it to, you need to go through. I'm going to move you in here closer again. Sorry for all of this manipulating here. But what you need to do is just open up that fret slot a little bit. And it only takes one stroke or so with a file. That's all there is to it. You're just taking a thousandth or two off that, cutting a little bevel on each side of that fret slot. Now, I think there are tools you can buy to do this. I'm sure there are official Luther's tools. But I also found out, unlike someone that we may know, that sometimes you can make Luther's tools just by thinking it. You don't need any sort of act of Congress or legislation or anything. There's no prize. Just by thinking it, you can turn common tools into Luther's tools. And that's, I guess, what I did. I took a 3-corner file from a set of needle files. You probably recognize that shank. And I just used those corners. I ground this side off. I don't remember why. And I even put a little point on this for another purpose. But just by taking that 3-corner file and just 1 or 2 strokes on each one of those fret slots makes you much better off. It's just so easy to do. And I'm going to go down through and do each one of those. I'll do them off camera. And after I do that, you want to make sure that every one of those fret slots is clean. Either blow them out with compressed air or another special Luthery tool. It's as common as can be, but by thinking it, I just made it an official Luther's tool. I took a common craft knife, I took a number 11 blade, and I reground it into this hook so that I can reach down into that fret slot and I can draw it through there and take out any residue that might be in the way. And it works with impunity, and it has worked with impunity for me for 27 or 8 of the 30 years I've been doing this. So I think the proof is in that pudding. Okay, I'm going to finish up here and then come back to the next scene.